So there are over 8,500 children that are in out-of-home care. Several of them have had their permanent parental rights severed and are ready to be adopted, but there's no one to adopt them.
My mom's, pregnant at 14 and a half, has me at around 15 and a half. I mean, she had every reason not to have me. And it's hard to see the world without you in it. And you think about any life we've lost, where it's either they think adoption's not an option, or there's not the resources to make it happen.
More people reacted worse to the fact that I was placing my baby for adoption than finding out I was pregnant.
There are hundreds of children that are ready to be adopted. Parents have been identified, children have been identified, and they are held up in the court system.
This is my own child's experience that I can tell you. My child was born on drugs, was in the hospital getting supplemental oxygen for days on a machine to help her breathe, not completely vent dependent, but needed a BiPAP machine to help her get over the hump of being drug addicted. When she got home to her mother, it was October, late October. It was already cool outside. It was her mother's birthday. She decided to take the baby out to celebrate. She went to a bar, left her there for 3 hours unattended. At about 5 o'clock in the morning, when she returned to the bar to retrieve her, she walked across the street to an aluminum recycling facility and stepped up to a semi-driver and asked him if he would take her away. Luckily, there was a secretary that had arrived at work already at that facility and called the police. Amber was in hysterics. Here she was, a newborn with no clothes. It's cold outside. There's no food. Her mother was strung out on drugs, and they took her to the hospital.
We give birth parents every opportunity, more so than we would ever give even the children that are languishing, waiting for stability. So a birth mom who has been in and out of prison and is addicted to drugs and has been given 15 different opportunities for stability, the state continues to give additional opportunities and is very hesitant to want to sever the permanent parental rights.
She was going to go back home to her mother, and the court system, or the social service folks, went to find the mother to tell her she's coming back. And luckily, somebody field drug screened her, and she tested positive. I feel with certainty that Amber wouldn't have survived. She would be a statistic, or be severely injured, and then she'd be at my facility and I'd get to take care of her there and not be her mom, which would be really sad.
So Cody came into out-of-home care, which is what we call it when a child is disrupted from their original home placement. He was 10 years old when he came out of his family's home, and he was in and out of 30 different placements. And literally for 8 years, he languished, just waiting for someone to want him. He wanted to be fostered, he wanted to be adopted. And the day he turned 18, he aged out of the system. The state no longer provided support to him, and he walked out our front door free, but completely on his own. And I think he was excited to be on his own, but still very sad that no one over the course of 8 years had ever wanted him enough to adopt him. There are, I think, 230 young adults that are over the age of 18, but they're not quite 21 yet, and they still want to be adopted. And it's not adoption for legal purposes because they need financial support. They want to be adopted because they want to go to someone's home to spend the holidays with. They want to have siblings, and they want to get older in life having a family and a support system, and it's so sad.
As a freshman in college, whenever I first found out I was pregnant, the first feelings were just very scared and like having no idea where to go, no idea where to turn to, not sure how other people would react to it, not sure how my parents would react and what decisions to make, if I had freedom to make the decision to choose adoption, or how I had no idea how it was going to be. The very first thing I did was drive home, and I went to go tell my mom, because she was like one of the only people who I felt safe knowing, and I felt very, very secure with her in that. Her first reaction was she immediately told me it was okay. She handled things very well because she didn't want to scare me into making any decisions that I would regret later.
My brother and sister were adopted different families. We had two siblings, myself being the third, and all different parents, and all coming out of St. Joe and really Catholic, missions there. And so I'm born in '66, kind of pre-Roe versus Wade. And so in that era, a lot of my neighbors had adopted kids. St. Joe would call at 5 o'clock, and parents would wait for the phone to ring, and that one phone call could change their lives.
A lot of people thought the idea of me placing my baby for adoption was a taboo type subject, and they weren't okay with it. They were more accepting of me being pregnant at 19 years old than me doing what was best but hardest and placing her for adoption.
And my neighbor was covered with incredible success stories of families opening their doors and transferring lives like myself.
I was from a very well-off Christian family, and we could have financially supported the baby, but I knew that that wouldn't mean I was able to mentally and emotionally support the baby.
I need to let those young women know, if you can decide and pray about it and give your child up, there's tons of great families that will give you an open adoption, they would give you access, and it could be the best of both worlds.
The day I gave birth to my baby was obviously very difficult, and saying goodbye to her was difficult, but the thing that kept me through and the thing that kept me strong was knowing that the parents that I had chose were loving, and I was in a comfortable relationship with them, and that I would get to see her in a couple months, and that it wasn't goodbye forever. It was just a goodbye temporarily.
I was able to speak to my birth mom. I would say, I'm glad you gave me up for adoption so I could have a better life, and I know you love me, and I know it was hard for you to give me up for adoption.
It's interesting when we tell our story about Olivia, it seems like a magical, just happen, poof, we had a baby. But you and I know that's not true.
Yeah, that definitely was not true.
The first opportunity we had to adopt was a little girl, and I was really excited about it. But what happened in the end was the biological mother's sister decided to parent. The second disappointment was harder to stomach. We had been told we were gonna get a little boy, and we literally get a phone call. The grandparents have interceded, and they're gonna keep the baby.
At that point, we realized that this is not going to be an easy journey.
I went down to the basement of our home in Michigan, and I laid on the staircase and I cried. And I asked God, what did I do wrong? Why can't I have a baby? And then I toughened up. I said, because that wasn't my baby. God's got a baby for me, and heck, I wanted a girl. So I told the agency, okay, keep trying, but this time I'm getting what I want. I want a little girl, and I'm not gonna settle for less, and I want a little girl that's healthy, and I want her to be part Hispanic and part Austrian, just like my husband, and I want her to already be born when I get a call, and I want the birth mother to have already waived her rights. And they said, Mrs. Neubauer, I hate to tell you, you're never gonna get a baby. And I said, nope, you don't know me very well. So I see that I have a message, and it's from the adoption agency, and they said, call us immediately. And I call them, and they said, Mrs. Neubauer, are you sitting down? I said, well, I'm sitting down in my car. He said, you need to pull over. It had been 3 weeks since we had learned we weren't gonna get the baby boy. Right. And they said, I don't know what kind of relationship you have with God, but it's pretty amazing because you just got everything on your checklist. A little girl has been born. She's got an Austrian biological mother, a Hispanic biological father. They've already signed away, the birth mother's already signed away her rights. She's born, you need to come get her right now.
So I have 2 biological kids, and honestly, I didn't really know how I was gonna feel. adopting another child, if it was going to be different. I just, I didn't know what to expect. And literally, the minute I saw Olivia, I knew this was my child. I knew there is no difference. I said, biological or not, they're my kid.
And that's when Kurt and I looked at each other and I said, well, this is my passion. I'm gonna help other people do this. Because there should be no reason that a child doesn't have a family to love them. Right. And so we started the Olive Branch. We named it after Olivia. And since then, we've anonymously donated formula to a family that the needs of the child they were adopting were so great and they couldn't afford the special formula. And you think, oh, what's the big deal with low expensive formula? Well, when you're on a fixed income of less than $25,000 a year and your child's formula is $2,000 of that, that's a big deal. Yeah. So the Olive Branch was able to eliminate that barrier. The most beautiful thing about adoption, and this is what I didn't know until we adopted Olivia, a lot of times people would say to me, your daughter's so lucky. Her life is so much better with you. And that may or may not be true. You have to ask her. But I can tell you, my life is way better than it would have been without her.
Me, when I think about adoption, it's probably the single best blessing of my lifetime.
If another girl came to me and asked about if she was in my shoes and was considering adoption, I would definitely recommend it to her.
So to a parent that is just considering the possibility of opening their home for fostering or for adopting, they just need to just take that bold step and move over the line and let that opportunity happen.
It was hands down the best decision I have ever made.
So if you're thinking about adopting, stop thinking about it, just do it.